Hi friends, Robert here for Diverse Opals. Welcome back to our YouTube channel. I want to say a big thank you to those of you who have been encouraging my wife. She did our last video and she did a good job, and you gave words of encouragement to her and we really appreciate it. So a big thank you to all of you. Today I want to talk about something that we probably have all encountered at some stage in our life. If you're involved in the opal industry, you would have encountered this before. These are in fact opal triplets, and these are the pinnacle, or perhaps the highest quality that you could expect with regards to opal triplets. These are not your normal ones that you might encounter or the ones that you might make. These are special, and it takes a long time to find this sort of quality of material. So today my intent is to take you through the stages and processes that I learnt to make triplets back when I started in this industry in 1978. That's when I first started in this industry, and I was schooled in the art of making triplets. So I'm going to share with you all the stages that I learnt then, and this hopefully will result in a quality stone and will be of help to you if you ever decide to make triplets. Now this process or this tutorial may be in 1 or 2 or 3 parts, just depending upon how far we can get through this. In front of the camera you can see some slices of opal. As you can see, we have a number of slices on this board. It's very thin. This material is in thickness, an actual thickness of about 0.1 of a millimeter or 4/1000ths of an inch. Okay, so it gives you some sort of an idea of how transparent this is. You can see virtually through it. It gives you an idea of how thin these pieces are. Now, I'm going to assume that you have your opal and you have processed it, you've sliced it to some degree. You may not have had the opportunity or pleasure of using this type of system, which is the multi-slicing blade, and as you can see, this thin slice originally came from this type of blade. This type of system allows you to cut multiple slices at once, and it's actually the most efficient way of being able to slice your opal. For many of you it may be hand slicing, and hand slicing is okay, but the problem with hand slicing is the loss. Every time you make a cut with your diamond saw blade, that saw blade may be the equivalent of maybe 2 or 3 slices. So you can understand why people went to this type of method. It is a slow method. If you want to see how this process works, because we're not going to go to this in great detail today, you can find a previous video that I did a number of years ago in where I am slicing mother of pearl. But it is in fact the same process that applies to mother of pearl. The link for the video that I'm referring to will be provided underneath this video, so you can see how it is in fact sliced on this type of machine. So we're going to assume that you have your opal, and the next step from here, of course, just touching upon the material itself, you can see colour that is in fact missing. This area here is nothing, but you have some beautiful colour here. I don't know if you can see it in the viewfinder. And you will have broad flashes, you'll have pinfire. This is a pinfire pattern. This material, I would say, is predominantly from Cooper Pedy, and Cooper Pedy traditionally produces the best type of material for making triplets and is in high demand amongst triplet cutters. When I first came into this industry back in 1978, in South Australia there were about 250 to 300 triplet cutters, either part-time or full-time. Now those numbers have dwindled to less than a handful. So it's a bit unfortunate, but that's the way things go. Just before I go any further, I'd just like to apologise. It's raining here today, and once again our iron roof is contributing to the background sound, so apologies for that. Hopefully you can hear us. This stage of the process requires a blackening of the opal and also glass. Now, what we have here is a piece of frosted glass. It's been sanded on one side. It's been either ground or it's been sanded. And on the back it is in fact polished. What we need to do is to stick the opal onto this glass, but to highlight the colour of the opal we need to paint it. The colour is already exists in the opal, but we just want it to be seen. So what we're going to do is we're going to mix together a small amount of lamp black into a container with some alcohol. In this particular case it will be methylated spirits that we're using, and it won't take very long to mix as it dissolves quite quickly. So we just put a bit of this in there and stir it up. You may have seen this process in another video. Once the lamp black is on the surface of the opal and on the glass, the alcohol evaporates very quickly and leaves behind a very thin layer of lamp black, which when glue is applied to, it actually dissolves and becomes part of it. So what we'll do is we'll just do this. Now some people use Texticolor. Not something I'm accustomed to or had learnt to use. So I have my reservations. Whatever you use has to be compatible with the glue and compatible with the opal itself. I wouldn't be using plastics as a backing. It has to be of something of similar hardness to the opal, something that will expand and contract at the same rate through different seasons, different conditions, and that's in effect the way it turns out. So we'll just wait a few minutes, or not even, maybe a few minutes, for the alcohol to evaporate, and we'll be left with a very thin layer. So just to add to that, you can use black potch from Lightning Ridge. In this particular case we are using glass because it is readily available and easy to work with. This particular glass is 0.9 of a thickness. You can get 0.7, you can get 0.5, and I think 0.4. And the more or the thinner that you have it, maybe relative to the depth of the settings that you're actually working with. But this is quite a common thickness that is in fact used in the opal industry. Alright, so our opal and our glass is now dried, which, as I said, it doesn't take very long because of the content of alcohol. The next thing we'll be doing is gluing these two items together, and this here has been my choice, and in fact the choice of many triplet cutters over the years. Yoo-Hoo does provide a very good glue, and although there are other brands in the marketplace, there's nothing wrong with using other brands, but Yoo-Hoo, as I said, has been used by us, by myself, and by many triplet cutters throughout Australia and maybe even worldwide. As long as your glue is 24-hour, that's okay, and as long as it's clear, preferably clear, is the idea. You don't want a yellow glue or some sort of colour. This does dry very clear, and that's why I use it. I'm also using here an industrial quality or industrial style heating plate. You can in fact use a barbecue hot plate if you like. If you have access to a barbecue hot plate, that's good, because what happens is that when you use this particular glue with heat, it dries quickly and it dries stronger and harder. So that's why we use that. And so the heat of your hot plate should be such that you put your hands on and you go 1, 2, 3. Oh, that's getting too hot. If you put your fingers on there and they stick immediately, well, it's obviously too hot. The warmth is important. So it's the processes of equal amounts. And we don't need a lot because it's not a very big area to glue. But it does have to be a 2-part glue and epoxy. There are some people that use ultraviolet curing glue, but that is actually becoming harder and harder to procure. So this is something that's readily available and will continue to be readily available as well. And it's ideal that you have everything warm. Trying to glue cold things together is not preferable. So I'm just warming up the glue as well. You don't have to, but using the hot plate method ensures that this sets within about 30 minutes as opposed to overnight curing. So I'm happy with the way this is mixed up at the present. Now I'm just applying a reasonable layer of glue onto the surface of the glass. Don't apply too little. And I'm actually using tweezers are an important part of this process of being able to handle such thin, delicate pieces, because you don't want to, your fingers can cause it to break and crack. And now the process is just gently placing your fingers as an even distribution on here and just gently rubbing it down. If we don't rub it down, there's the possibility that we're going to have bubbles in the back of the stone or in the back of this particular piece, and we want to avoid that if we can, because we want as much strength as we possibly can. Now we just leave that for about half an hour for it to cure. We're looking at the back of this piece, and it would appear that it's on there quite well. There doesn't seem to be any evidence of air bubbles, which is a good sign. Sometimes you can see them. So as I said, we'll just leave this now. So here we have examples of some pieces that were done, actually not by myself, but by somebody else. It just happened to be that I inherited them at some stage. This is not great material, but this is typical of the way things are laid out. If you've done a lot of slicing, a lot of preparation, and you are using the standard size of 49 by 49 glass, that's 49 millimeters by 49 millimeters, you just stack them as much as you can onto the surface of the glass to make full use of it. The next stage from this is to in fact flatten this, because although the opal in itself is fairly thin, and if you're doing this by hand, you're going to have to bring the thickness of the opal down even further, because if we don't do that, our opal looks milky. And so what we'll do is we'll get on the grinder on a diamond lap and we'll take this down. Actually, we'll talk about some diamond laps that you can use or some other processes to get that desired result.